Welcome to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we are talking with Mark Hoffman. Mark from NSS Consulting and the Resilient Journey podcast. Welcome back again today.
Good to be here, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Today I'd like to talk about the New Year's disaster that happened in a Swiss bar where the sparkler set off the roof and there were a dozen deaths, I believe it is, or more. And I'd like to talk about that and some of the things that we've heard from the bar owners and patrons and things like that.
Sure.
Now, one of the things that came up is that bar owners were complaining that how could they ever know everything about everything? So, where do we draw the line when you're a business owner to know all the specifics of the foam being sprayed on your roof and whether it's flammable or not? Where do we draw that line?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because when we look at it from our perspective in terms of being resilience professionals, and Alex, for you and I both being resilience consultants and going out and trying to look through the lens of our clients, it's an interesting perspective. And I think we have a little bit of a unique view of that because the question is being aware, is being unaware rather of the dangers a valid excuse?
Hmm.
Uh, so look, no, it is not possible for people to know every aspect of everything. But if we look at what happened in this particular case, bartenders lifting colleagues on their shoulders while holding a sparkler attached to a bottle. Yeah, okay. I mean, is that just, would the reasonable person look at that and believe that to be a smart thing to do? I mean, so I'm going to say that I'm going to lean on sort of this approach. I think that business owners, and therefore I think their employees, because they need to train them, have a duty of care to identify foreseeable risks. And I think while nobody would ever sit in a meeting and go, hey, does anybody have the risk in the risk register of don't hold a sparkler too close to the ceiling? No. But common sense in that particular case says that's not a smart thing to do. I'm not saying that employees have to have this deep technical knowledge of, infrastructure and fire safety and all of those things, but I just think it comes down to reasonable common sense and a basic duty of care.
Yeah. And hopefully a open communication with your vendors, your suppliers, the people that are doing your roof. Ask them just some basic questions, just so you have a basic knowledge of what's happening.
I've always thought about this in terms of would I be willing to own a business where people came into my establishment and did things like a bar or a bowling alley or whatever. And we've all seen the videos of people, you know, throwing a bowling ball through the ceiling or, something stupid like that. For me, and this is going to come off as harsh, and I'm sorry, but I think the level of stupidity in the world would make me say there is no way I would ever own a business where somebody like this, would come in and have the opportunity to be stupid. In this particular case, I'm not calling them stupid, but in this particular case, it was foolish to do what they did. And I don't think talking to vendors or anything like that is the answer. I just think it comes down to common sense and using the space between your ears. And yeah, that's maybe that's not a popular opinion, but that's how I feel about it.
Well, I'm going to take that a step further because there were complaints that staff weren't trained on evacuation or any kind of safety measures. That
Yeah.
had to, and I'm sure my opinion is that contributed to this disaster as well.
Okay, now we're getting into something that I think is very, very controllable and absolutely should be mandatory. Anytime you have uh, a building, a business, whatever it is, whether they're your employees who are in the building or whether it's guests or customers or whatever, first of all, evacuation has to be clearly marked. There's regulations for that. That's nothing new. But the staff has to know how to control the situation. You can't just yell fire and expect people to respond, um, calmly and effectively. The staff has to, without question, has to be trained. And if they were trained, then apparently they didn't, you know, execute their training very well. If they were not trained, then that's going to go back on the bar owner.
Yeah. And it also, my last point is it seems when this occurred, social media
Yeah,
created false narratives and things that were occurring. How should bar owners, these victims, everybody deal with social media who is literally ahead of this story and sending out all this wrong information? How should
yeah.
all of us deal with that?
Social media is a fast beast. When we look at crisis communications, we always talk about trying to get out in front of whatever the story is. Uh, in a situation like this, where, it's a privately owned bar, it's not like they're going to be able to call, Brenda from the communications team and say, hey, I need you to draft me a statement. These are people who are dealing themselves with the loss and with what happened. And to me, the social media frenzy that came out of this, it's like they were trying to defend a tsunami with an umbrella, and it's just not going to happen. Over time, it is important to be able to establish the facts of what happened. But in real time, that there is just no way for a small organization like this to be able to stay in front of it. Maybe what they could have done is made a statement on the same social media platforms and tried to, curtail some of the misinformation that was going on. But you know what it's like, whether it's a bar shooting or a fire or a tragedy or anything like that. It's instant. It's right now. And it is very, very difficult to get out in front of that.
And I guess that, if you are using it, be truthful.
Well,
Acknowledge, because we've had this conversation before. Acknowledge and take ownership of what's happened, because then once you've done that, you've taken the wind out of the sails of all the people who are spreading the myths and disinformation.
yeah. So here's the thing, and you're going to get me on a soapbox here. So the second worst thing you can do is nothing, right? Don't say anything. That's probably the second worst thing that you can do. The first worst thing that you can do is get on there and lie about it. Uh, and they didn't say this. I'm not saying they said this, but I'll just use this as an example. If they were to come on and say that the fire was caused by some electrical malfunction in the ceiling, and then later it was learned that it was because of the sparklers, I mean, that's not survivable. You just cannot survive that. And so, Alex, I'm going to apologize to you right now because it's getting to be a little bit of a soapbox time for me. I don't care what you're seeing out of Washington, D.C. Facts are facts, and you cannot lie about what the video shows. And if anybody thinks that that's going to translate out of politics and into a corporate crisis communication strategy, you are absolutely wrong. The facts matter, and whatever you say in written statement or in a video that's going on social media or whatever, it has to stand up to fact checking.
Yeah,
You got me
agreed.
fired up with that one.
I know.
Mhm.
And I know from reading some of the social media posts regarding the Swiss bar fire, there were all kinds of theories that were floating around. People saying different things and that were happening. So it was hard, again, you're seeing the video that shows sparklers going off the roof on fire,
Right.
and using your example. So don't tell me, and don't communicate that it was an electrical fire. My eyes are seeing something completely different. You know,
Let me tell you something. This is something that I have a problem with right now regarding air quotes journalism. Uh, the average user on social media, somebody just posting on Instagram, they're not held to a standard of factual reporting. They're just going to say whatever they're going to say. But far too often, particularly if they have influence and they have followers, their statement, right or wrong, with no measure of accuracy, becomes taken as the gospel truth.
yeah,
And that is what's wrong with social media, is it's the loudest voice wins, not the most accurate. We cannot fall into that fallacy when it comes to corporate crisis communications. We always have to be facts first because the facts matter, because they will affect everything that goes downstream.
yeah, agreed. I think we should come on and have another talk about that use of social media right now in crisis communications and crisis management and what we're seeing. So I might reach out to you and we'll do a separate episode.
Sounds good to me.
But Mark, thanks for talking to us today about the Swiss Bar Fire. Always a pleasure, and I look forward to our next chat.
Thank you, Alex.